Welcome to the Gifts for Glory podcast, where we celebrate and promote men and women using their gifts for God's glory. Know someone who is making an impact for God's kingdom using their gifts, talents, and passions? We'd love to meet them. Send us an email at podcast@giftsforglory.com. That's podcast@gifts4glory.com. And now here is our host, Dave Ebert.
Hey, and welcome to the latest edition of the Gifts for Glory podcast. Took last week off for Easter, so hope that you missed us, but not too badly. And I hope that you had a great Easter weekend celebrating the death and resurrection of our Lord and Savior, to make sure that we can be go into the Holy of Holies beyond the veil and spend eternity with the Father. So thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Really excited about our interview coming up in just a few moments. And then we also want to tell you about some other exciting things. Really excited about what's going on with Well-Versed Comedy. Going to pull this up so you can see it. RFK Lockport Comedy Night is coming up in just about 10 days. It'll be next Friday night on April 29th in Lockport, Illinois at the Roxy Theater. It's going to be a great night. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tracy DeGraff, phenomenal comedian. She will be there. Nikki is going to open up with some stand-up as well. So we're going to have a little bit of everything for you. We're going to have some stand-up. We're going to have some improv. It'll be a lot of fun. And the great thing is it's all to raise money for Royal Family Kids Camp, which is an annual camp for kids in the foster care system. So often they're forgotten about. They don't get birthdays. They don't get Christmases. They really don't get a lot of celebration, and they don't get a lot of opportunities to be treated like a normal kid, because they're bouncing around from foster care home to foster care home. Oftentimes they're relegated to a case number instead of being treated like a child. So for a week at RFK Camp, they're treated like royalty. And I love being a part of it. Love this organization. And all ticket sales will help go towards this summer camp. So please go to rfkcomedy.eventbrite.com to purchase your tickets. Tracy DeGraff's got a huge following. So get your tickets ahead of time to make sure that you get in, because I don't want you to walk up to the door and be like, sorry, at capacity. Because we'll still be like, hey, we'll take your donation, but you don't get a comedy show. So we don't want to do that to you. So get your tickets early. Tickets do include 2 soft drinks from the bar. It will be a dry show, just so you know. But the bar will be open for soft drinks and water, things of that nature. That's coming up next Friday on the 29th of April. rfkcomedy.eventbrite.com for your tickets. And now, a month in advance, looking ahead, we're going to be at the Hope Center. And this is just going to be an open improv comedy show at the Hope Center on Boughton Road in Bolingbrook, Illinois. Great way to bring family and friends out and just enjoy some great comedy. So if you're in the Bolingbrook area or know somebody in the Bolingbrook area, let them know that we're coming to town to Bolingbrook to the Hope Center on May 28th. And all of these shows that we're talking about the God Gave Us Laughter Tour. After the last 2 years, we need to tap into that gift, that blessing that is laughter. And that's what we're trying to do with Well-Versed Comedy is we're going on the God Gave Us Laughter Tour. If your church, your organization, Boys and Girls Club, your Moose Lodge, whatever group you're a part of that could use a night of entertainment and comedy, whether it's for a fundraiser, whether it's for a volunteer appreciation, we would love to hear from you, and we would love to come out and bring some laughter and bring an opportunity to just kind of put the world to the side and just enjoy a night together. So get in contact with us. You can reach us at improv@wellversedcomedy.com, improv@wellversedcomedy.com, or you can reach us through our social media at Well-Versed Comedy. So that is enough of the announcements for this evening. Let's dive into one of my favorite parts of the show, and that's the Devotions with Dave segment. This segment, we are going to be reading from a very popular verse. A lot of people know it. It's Romans 5:8. And it says, but God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. And I think that's a very important verse to remember the day after Easter, as we're recording and broadcasting this podcast, is that Easter was about Christ coming to save us and Christ coming to pay the price for us. But the thing is that Romans shows us is God showed his great love because we didn't have to fix ourselves. We didn't have to try to save ourselves. We didn't have to clean the house. So many times when we have visitors coming over, we do this wild flight of the bumblebee, trying to clean everything up, trying to put everything in the closet, trying to hide the mess. But we don't have to do that with Jesus. God knew our mess. God knows our mess. And Christ still died for us knowing that mess. Now, we're not supposed to stay and sit and squalor in that mess. It's very similar to a firefighter. A firefighter comes to find you in the middle of a burning building. He's not there to just say, "Hey, I love you," and you're just going to burn in this building. No, Jesus is there to try to pick you up and get you out of that building and into a better life. So God did that because he loves us. And he did it despite the fact that we still have a mess. He did it despite the fact that we're still sitting in the middle of that fire. He did it to rescue us. It's up to us to take him by the hand and let him lead us out of the fire, or we can stay in that fire. But God gave us the choice. And Jesus is how that choice was made possible. So Romans 5:8, but God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we're still sinners. Such an important verse to remind ourselves that we didn't do anything and we can't do anything to earn it. God did it all on his own. Jesus did it all on his own. Holy Spirit did it all on his own. We can't do it. We can't earn it. So that's the beauty of the gospel, is that it's not up to us. All we have to do is just say yes. That's our Devotions with Dave segment. Now let's get to our guest. Our guest is an actor. He's a director. He's also a stunt driver. He does his own stunts. Even in improv, he is a new member of Well-Versed Comedy, joining us in February of this year. So to get you a little taste of what this man is capable of doing, let's check out his reel. Wow. So that is Jonathan Wessel, and this is Jonathan Wessel, our guest at this time. Jonathan, welcome to the Gifts for Glory podcast.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here.
And just now dawned on me that I show that reel, which is your sizzle reel. It's just this powerful, almost trailer of this is who Jonathan Wessel is. And so our audio listeners who are listening to audio podcasts, they just got 2 minutes of really cool music. So they're going to have to go to your YouTube page and find that so they can actually see what they missed.
They can't. I would hope the music would do a good job of giving them an idea of what's going on, but,
exactly,
their imagination can go anywhere. So they may be thinking of me jumping off buildings or something like that's not in there. So
they're like, wow, it sounds like a Marvel reel. Maybe is he in the MCU? And not yet.
No, not yet. I'm hoping I'll get cast as the Black Panther, but I'm kind of doubting that will happen.
Yeah, I think that's already they're going with the female that was like Black Panther's number 2. So
I try. I guess.
Yeah,
you can't win them all.
Yeah, you could definitely be the next Bruce Banner. I think that would be more in your line. And
are you trying to say I have an anger problem?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
It was a compliment of intelligence.
Oh, good, because you don't want to make me angry.
No, Mike and Noam have warned me about that.
Oh yeah.
But so you kind of do a little bit of everything. You do you do your own stunts. You also stunt drive. You're an actor, and looking at your reel, you've also directed a few short films. So tell us, how did you get into acting, and what are kind of your motivations to get out there and to perform on film, TV, and on stage?
Great question. So it all started with the idea of being rich and famous.
Okay.
It kind of, actually, to be truthful, it kind of was that way. So, because I got really interested in it when I was very young. I was probably like 7 or 8 years old when I first got interested in the idea of acting. Maybe even a little younger. I'm not sure, but I was watching, old TV shows. Little House on the Prairie was a big influence on me. So Little House on the Prairie, Bonanza, Gunsmoke, Leave It to Beaver, a lot of westerns, things like that. And I was kind of watching these and going, "Wow, I would love to do that. I would love to be an actor." I think shows like Little House kind of got me interested in being an actor, and shows like the Gene Autry Show and Bonanza got me interested in doing stunts, seeing all the cowboy action stuff. And so I was about 8 years old. I did my first performance, and that was in church for like a musical drama. And there were a couple of kid parts in there that I got to play one of them. And so I think that's where I really got interested and went, "Oh, I could do this." And that kind of stuck with me for a long time. I didn't really do a lot of acting between 8 and 13 years old. And during that time was when I still had the interest but didn't have the opportunity. And I was thinking, "Oh, I really like to do this. I just love getting in front of people and performing and everything." And at that time, like I said, it was kind of about, being rich and famous, because the whole idea that actors make, a ton of money and they're really well known and all that was kind of like, "Oh, well, that'd be cool." And but that quickly shifted once I got older and a little bit more mature, and film started to affect me differently than they used to. So when I was younger, it was all about, "Oh, this is cool, this is exciting, action, whatever." And as I got older, it became more, "Wow, that really moved me. That was such an emotional story, emotional performance." And like, I was feeling like I want to do that. I want to be the person that's making the audience laugh or cry, or and ultimately change something about their lives. I think those are the films that I watched that I went, "Oh man, seeing that made me want to become a better person," or what have you. And that's really what became I think the real motivation, and still the motivation for doing what I do. And and so that was really how it started. And I did theater for a long time. I did theater, like I said, I didn't do much between 8 and probably 13. It was only church stuff here and there, very little bit.
Yeah.
And then I started doing drama regularly when I was 14, pretty much then on, all the way through high school, and then uh, community theater after high school. And then I started and then at that point I was probably, oh, what year was it? 2020, not 2020, 2002, 2003, maybe.
Mm.
Um, no, because no. I'm skipping around decades too far. Go forward one more decade. About 2012 or 2013 is when I began to really feel like God was calling me to be an actor. At that point, I was starting to delve into the film industry, because not that I got tired of theater, but I just felt the intimacy of film work was more in what I would like to do. Partially through my upbringing with theater, which was about being big and over the
Mhm.
top, exaggerated, and no truthfulness in it. And so that's what kind of, I think, drew me to film specifically. But at that point, I began to realize I think this is what God is calling me to. And so I started pursuing that in the film aspect even more. And I do both. I still do theater and film, but I try to lean towards film more.
Yeah. Do you use acting? Is that your primary occupation now, or are you kind of a bivocational until that big, rich, and famous contract comes?
I'm vocational kind of. I do a multitude of different things. I guess that'd be polyvocational then. What I do is I work. I'm self-employed. I like do DoorDash and stuff like that to earn extra income, but I don't work a full-time job anywhere or a major part-time job anywhere because I'm trying to um, work more in the film industry. So, and I got projects coming up that are taking up a lot of my time. That if I did have a full-time job, I wouldn't be able to do these because I wouldn't be able to get the time off
Right.
for
Okay.
them.
So, are there any projects that you've been a part of that people might be familiar with that you want to kind of self promote a little bit, kind of plug?
Yeah, that's a good question because I have no idea who the audience is, so I'm not sure what reach my films have had. But some of the more recent films I've done, there was a feature film. 2018 is when we filmed it, but it didn't come out until 2 years ago. Oh no! I think it was last year, 2021. I get the dates mixed up. It's been so long.
Yeah.
But it's called Counter Column, and it's a Christian feature film about two different young men who from different walks of life. One's a Christian, one's not a Christian. They end up meeting up together in army boot camp, and both of their lives are drastically changed. And it's meant to be a combination of gospel presentation and about being a good witness. Not about not hiding your uh you're hiding your beliefs and because you're afraid of what the repercussions might be. And the title is very intentional, of course. Counter column it's kind of a double entendre because the
Mm-hmm.
idea is that in the military there's a maneuver called a counter column, which allows the entire column of soldiers to go do a complete 180 in a very short space. So if you're confined to a very limited area where you can't do a full turnaround, you basically fold in on yourselves to turn around and keep the formation the same, essentially. Um, and the idea of doing is basically doing a very tight 180, and the same idea becoming a Christian is that 180 that occurs.
Mm.
So there's that project. I think it's yeah, I think it's the DVDs are available now. I want to say I have it on my bookshelf. I do. So it is available. I think you go to just look up Counter Column the movie. You should be able to find it.
Yeah.
I can't recall the website. It might be Counter Column the movie. Actually, might be the website name.
Yeah.
And then another film I did, which is available on YouTube and Redeem TV, is called Night Guard, and
Mm.
that's a short film that's designed to be more of a proof of concept film for a potential series about this superhero Night Guard, and of course, and again, Christian film that has a focus on the idea of, well, hard to say what the series is going to be, but the movie itself kind of has the idea of um, not being able to save yourself, or you can't do things, you can't save people on your own. You need God's word. So it's essentially a Marvel film, but a Christian Marvel film in that sense. It's got everything you'd expect. It's got action, it's got comedy, it's got serious moments, it's got masked superheroes and all of that, but very solid biblical message in it, and it's really good. It's probably one of my favorite projects to have worked on. And there's a lot of other films I've worked on too, but those are the two that stick out and are a little bit more recent as well.
Very good. And see a couple of my just looking at the counter column and just seeing some familiar names that I'm friends with through social media, like Leanne Johnson, Michelle King. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I've got that up on the screen right now. You said it is countercolumnthemovie.com to check that one out. So great great memory you've got.
Yeah.
It's like you memorize words for a living.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. Other times I just make it up as we go.
Yeah, and that's where we fit in with well-versed comedy, because like a lot of Christian actors, I kind of do the thing where if I've got like 30 or 40 friends in common with somebody, I'll go ahead and like take a chance and add them. And that's kind of what I did with you. I was like, oh, he's Illinois based, and we've got a bunch of friends in common through social media. And I said, oh, I'll take a chance, and added you. And then when we were doing another round of auditions, I said, hey, he's an actor, he's local, let's see if he wants to try it out. And you came. So other than my well-worded invitation, what drew you to want to do some comedy with us?
That's a great question. And I will say that I don't even remember you adding me. So it's like it was either that long ago or it was with a bunch of other requests that I all accept at the same time or something. So I didn't even realize I was friends with you at the time. And so I was really curious, why did I get this invitation to auditions for this? Because I really wasn't familiar with who you were, never heard of Well-Versed Comedy. And I decided, well, I've always been interested, honestly, I've always been interested in doing improv. I tried it out a little bit when I was younger. And when I taught theater, I did some improv with my students. Specifically, one day we were doing a show, and so what I do is we end up usually setting up. We do one of two things. We either set the stage up the day of, so we put the whole set together the day of the show and then perform that evening and the following day, or we'll set the show put the set together the day before, and then we'll have our dress rehearsal the afternoon of the show for that evening or whatever. So it was one of those two things. And so we had a long break in between whatever we were doing, probably dress rehearsal and the show. And so we decided, hey, let's just do some of the comedy, some of the improv games and try them out. Cause I love doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd seen, Whose Line Is It Anyway, those kind of things. And I always thought it was kind of fascinating how people could make up stuff on the spot and be really funny like that. And so when I saw that and saw it was improv and Christian improv, I thought, why not go for it? It's I've always wanted to do improv on a more regular basis, and but I've always been hesitant too because of today's culture and everything, and being put in there, like, oh great, so here's a thing that I have to do, or a scene's being presented. It's like I'm not comfortable with that, but the whole yes and goes out the window. When you're throwing in that, you got to choose. So when I saw it was Christian and clean improv, I thought, okay, let's give this a shot. And yeah, so I went out for it, and you guys, just like you took a chance in adding me, you took a chance in adding me to the group. And so far I haven't been a total disappointment, I think.
Not total. I mean, and here's the thing. God is very good at bringing the right people together. And this team, there'd be no other way other than God's hand than to bring us together, because we have a performer comes all the way from Racine, Wisconsin, Round Lake, Illinois, the city of Chicago, Orland Park. You come from south, even further south than I do. And then we've got north. It's spread out to where our circles would not cross other than God orchestrating it. And that's what it excites me, and that's what helps me find some reassurance, because I feel like I don't know how to run a business. I don't know how to do all this. And God's like, don't worry, I got it. Yeah. And so when we were looking, because for the longest time I was the only guy on the team, and so my wife would hang out just for accountability and for the appearance of accountability as well. But I wanted to be able to have another guy to hang out with. So it was really cool to add you, and then we added Michael along with Naomi. They were supposed to be on last week, but Naomi is recovering from a thing, and so they'll be on sometime in May. But yeah, we were excited to have you on because you're a trained actor. You've got skills. You add a great depth to our roster. So there is no disappointment. There is just like, yeah, this was a good pickup. It was. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like Rod Thorne drafting Michael Jordan.
Well, I'm no Michael Jordan. I'm probably more like Wilt Chamberlain, but we'll see.
I don't know. we'll see.
I don't have the height going for me for
Right.
either of them, so that's probably the main reason.
I guess I drafted John Stockton, I guess.
Yeah, Spud Webb.
Okay, I am derailing this. I'm sorry. But one of the favorite things about this show that I do is I always ask our guests to share their testimony. And one of the things that I always express is there's never a bad testimony. There's some that'll come, yeah, I was born a Christian, I was raised in a Christian home, I was completely protected, and they're like, I wish I had a testimony. I'm like, that's it, because you got to make the decision. So I love sharing testimonies because there's a million and one ways to get to God. And they're all beautiful and they're all great stories. So what is your story? Were you in a Christian home, or how did your faith come to be?
Yeah, I was gonna say something funny, but I won't. So I grew up in a Christian home. Both my dad's, as far as I know, my dad's, I can't remember if his grandparents were also Christians, but I know his parents were. And then my mom's side, Christians going back at least, I want to say at least three generations, I think. My mom's grandfather was a pastor, started a First Baptist Church of Burbank in Illinois, and did a lot of revival meetings and things like that. So strong Christian upbringing. I was probably going to church by the time I was a couple months old, the typical thing there. But I made a profession of faith when I was 4. I remember being in my bedroom with my dad, I want to say. And it's funny because the same year I got saved is the year I started playing the cello. So it's like those two things are kind of connected with each other, interestingly enough. But yeah, 4 years old in my bedroom. And I want to say I got baptized maybe 2 years later. And I, talk about being a performer and being out there and, especially doing improv where it's like this frightening thing to have to make everything up. I was so scared getting baptized, being in front of all these people. And the church we went to at the time probably had like 400 or 500 people in the congregation, somewhere around there, that I was so nervous that when the pastor who's baptized me asked me, if I had accepted Christ and all of that, rather than say, or however he phrased it, so I had to say, I yes, I have, or whatever, I just nodded. I didn't even give a verbal profession because I was so nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And all I had to do was say 1 or 2 words. The church I go to now, when people get baptized, they give their testimony like I'm doing now. They give their testimony before getting baptized. So if that was the case for me back then, I would have been a complete basket case, even though I love getting in front of my family and performing. So it was, for me back then, it was different, performing for family versus in public. And it took a long time to really get over the fear of public speaking and everything. But so I grew up.
You were 6 at the time, right?
Roughly 5 or 6, I think.
So there's a little bit extra grace there for being in front of that many people at 6, as opposed to like
yes,
22.
but when the girl that got baptized right before me is the same, like either a year older or the same age as me, was able to speak, that looks even worse. So that it wasn't the best thing, but I was very self-conscious and what's the other word? I was thinking of another word for it too. Self-conscious and sensitive. So it made it harder for me to want to be able to speak in front of people back then. But and I'm still going to church. My parents, we were very dedicated to church, and I always went. We went 3 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday nights. And I got involved in the ministry really early on too, with, I think probably the first thing I started doing in church ministry wise was singing in children's choir. And then we would sing in church, I don't know, once a quarter or whatever it was, every once in a while. And I started playing the cello in church, like playing, I may have started, I can't remember if I started playing for the services and just like the church orchestra. or if I started doing special music with string groups or not. But either way, I started getting involved in music pretty early on too. And then when I was old enough, I joined the church choir. I was probably like, well, I was in it for a while, so I was maybe like 14 or 15. I moved churches when I was almost 17. Yes, I was almost 17 when we moved churches, so it had to be like around 14 or 15 years old when I joined the adult church choir. Somewhere around there, maybe 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then started playing a lot of other special music, and then I got involved in the drama aspect of things too at the church. Like I said, I think my first one was at 8 years old, and I did our children's choir did a patriotic production called "Let's Sing a Song of America," which is kind of going through different eras of American history, and I had a small part in there in a Revolutionary War scene, which is funny because when you consider that at maybe like 11 or 12 years old, maybe doing that and playing soldier number 1 or whatever it was in this little thing for a Revolutionary War scene, to think that X amount of years later I would be playing a British soldier in a Revolutionary War movie is kind of funny. So I kind of just kind of how that comes together. And then I did work on a film last summer called Washington's Armor, which just released this year, which is also about George Washington's life, who was the subject of Let's Sing a Song of America for part of it. And I was playing a French soldier during the French and Indian War. So kind of funny how those things kind of all come together throughout the many years. But so yes, I've been involved in church ministry for a very long time, and still singing in my church choir, still play special music. My mom plays piano for the church. My dad's the choir director and all that. So we're very heavily involved, very dedicated to being in church and ministering in that way. And it's getting a little harder now with all the traveling I'm doing, and all that. But it's really good to be involved in a church and ministering in that way, and trying to incorporate some drama into the ministry if I can. It's difficult to do sometimes, but I try to as well, so I can be using my talents as an actor, not just in the Christian film industry, but also in the church.
So with you got a strong faith, you're heavily involved in church. How much does that influence what roles and what projects you're a part of? And what's your process in determining which ones you'll sign on to and which ones you'll pass?
That's a good question. So it's not that it's hard to answer, but sometimes it's hard to know what the production's going to entail completely before you get involved with it. Mm-hmm. So, because typically you ask, I do, I know a lot of other Christian actors do the same thing. They ask to see the entire script before they decide if they want to audition. Some film companies, some filmmakers will say yes and send you the entire script to read before you audition. Others are like, no, this is all you get. You just get the sides, which is the scene that they want you to read for the character, and that's it. And then you kind of have to go off of the log line, which is a description of what the film is about, the storyline is about, as well as character descriptions can tell you a lot. I can't tell you how many casting calls I've seen, casting breakdowns I've seen on different casting websites where they mention something specific about a character, especially like a main character, and you go, oh, I don't want to be involved in that. I can see what agenda they're pushing or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, which is nice because, before you even submit, oh, this is probably not something I want to be involved with. Otherwise, it depends on a couple of things. It depends on ultimately what the story is trying to get across, like what's the message that the film is trying to sell you on. How they're presenting that message is also a big factor. There's a lot of discussion in the Christian film industry about what's considered crossing a line in all the different areas and what's not, and there's such a huge spectrum of what Christian filmmakers believe is okay to use and what's not okay to use.
Mhm.
And there's constant debates about that, and it's crazy. So part of it too is you get to with looking at those discussions and things on social media and wherever else, you kind of pick up on, okay, so that person, their standards are way different than mine. So, and they seem to have a track record of these kind of films, so I know not to audition for them or what have you. But it does boil down to, as well as like, so there's one thing, there's the story, and there's what the messages are trying to convey through the story. What's the subject matter of the story, and then the other aspect is the character, as far as what happens with the character. Because one thing I was told way back when I was in high school, doing drama, one of my fellow students, his mother was a former professional actress in theater in Chicago, and she told me one of the major things that that determines or influenced whether or not she would take a part was whether or not the character had any redeeming qualities. Meaning, if the character is a bad person, what's the purpose of them being bad? Is it a story where they seek redemption, they get saved in the end of the story, perhaps? Or another aspect for me would be, they may be a bad person. We have to understand there are bad people, and you can't make a movie without having bad characters.
Right.
Not bad as in bad quality, bad written characters, but just evil people, what have you. But it's how are they being portrayed in the story. I'm totally fine playing an evil person as long as they're not being portrayed as being a great person.
Right.
I wouldn't play Hitler in a movie that the whole movie is to show how nice of a person Hitler was.
Right.
But if it's a film that's showing how evil of a person he was, and condemning him, that kind of thing, then I'd be fine with it. So a lot of it boils down to the content of the message of the film, both the storyline, how it's being presented, what message, what I forgot the word, what agenda they're trying to push with the story. And then the character, as far as does the character have any redeeming qualities, or are they being, if they're a bad person, are they being portrayed in a way that shows that what they're doing is wrong? And then the actual content of the film that they're portraying. And I'm not going to get into all of it, but I've been involved in discussions where people don't understand the difference between suggesting something that happens versus actually portraying it. Whether that be, one of the big ones is violence. They talk all the time about the Bible. Oh, there's so much violence in the Bible, but it's not as graphic as what we can show on film, because it's left up to your imagination as far as how it would look. You can describe something happening that's graphic, and leave it just basic. Oh, this person got shot, or that's the story in the Bible, and I'm forgetting which the characters, but the stake through the head in Judges. I can't remember her name now, but you can say she drove a stake through his head, and it's left up to your imagination. But you go, oh well, that's really graphic. No, it's not. But if you look at film and you go, okay, we're going to portray this down to the minutest graphic detail of it happening, that's very different than and you can't compare the two. I like to use the example of two examples I love to use are someone being killed and swearing. So you can portray someone dying without them actually having to die.
Yeah.
And that's kind of important because you can't get any more takes, once it's done. So you portray it, you're showing it that this has happened, or even suggesting that it happened, but it's not really happening. But if you have an actor swearing in the story, they're not making it look like they're swearing. They're not acting like they're swearing. They're actually saying the words.
Right.
That's totally different than implying something, because you're actually having to do it. I remember there was a film, Bob Jones University has been making films for a long time. And they made a film called Red Runs the River, which is a Civil War story that focused on, what's his name? General Ewell. And he was apparently a very, very crass person and swore a lot. And in the movie, instead of having the actor swear, because that would be wrong, what they did he basically said less offensive terminology, you know. They say like durned instead of the other D word and things like
Right.
that. So they softened it, but still got the idea across. So there is a difference there. And so a lot of it boils down to when you're auditioning for a part, oftentimes the filmmakers are willing to make changes. Like say, oh, I'm not going to say that word. Can you take it out? Then we can make this work or whatever. Oftentimes they're like, nope, I want that in there. And you're like, okay, well then see ya. So, so those, you have to make your own personal choices, but there's also a danger saying, well, it's my own personal choice. There's also a biblical standard for what's right and what's not right. And I think I'm trying to avoid going on a tangent here, but I feel like there's too many Christians in the film industry, actors or otherwise, who try to play up the idea of liberty, to be able to. They're basically trying to avoid legalism, so they swing the other direction and say, well, we can do whatever we want in the movie because we're under grace and whatever else. And that just gets really dangerous because then they start ignoring core concepts or I don't want to say mandates, but core principles of the Bible that go, well, doing that it goes against Scripture. So why are you saying that it's okay to do? So it tells you a lot about the person and the project, but it's sad that we have to deal with this even in Christian film nowadays, but you have to.
Yeah, and I've gotten into some discussions / debates with people about what lines are there when you're a Christian and you're doing acting. And I think you hit it. I think the difference is it glorifying the sin, or is it showing the downfall of it? So are you playing a murderer where it shows murder is really cool, or are you playing a murderer where it shows that there's a comeuppance or that it's not glorified? Because and we don't need to be in this thing where every Christian film or every Christian production or every production that a Christian is a part of has to have a happy ending, because in this side of life, there are a lot of sad endings. There are a lot of bad endings. So we don't have to have the happily ever after, but we also can't be, in my opinion and in my belief, that we can't be in a position where we're glorifying that which goes against the word. And I think that, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, that's a very good point, because there's a difference, like I said, between, portraying something in a way that's tasteful or appropriate versus doing it for gratuitous reasons or because you can. But also the idea is that, in Christian film, the idea is to be, you want to keep up the idea of we are in the world, but not of the world. And the idea is that we're supposed to be set apart from the world. So that way the world sees that we're different and are drawn to that, that difference, as opposed to trying to be just like them, to try to fit in with them, to try to then convert them. That doesn't work. It doesn't work to fit in with them. Hey, I want to reach these guys that I know that hang out at the bar all the time. So I'm just going to start drinking and smoking and all this stuff and hanging out at the bar all the time, and going along with their dirty humor because I want to win them to Christ. That's not going to work. They're going to call you a hypocrite at that, at some point. Then if you try to witness to them. So with the Christian films, the same thing. You need to be different from the world. I'm not saying be different as far as the quality by all. No, you should succeed to have better quality film productions than Hollywood does. But it's the content that should be different. It should be, how you portray everything and whatnot. And yes, every film does not have to have a happy ending. And I feel like that was the problem with most Christian films back in the 80s and 90s and so on, was that they always wanted to have it end with everybody being happy and everything working out. And I made that part of that might be the idea that we want to show that, in the end, everything works out, for good. But that's not the case, in this life, like you said, everything will be made right in the, when Christ comes back, everything will be made right. But for right now, there are not always going to be happy endings. So Christian films should show reality, the reality of life, And I don't want to knock any particular Christian films, but there are some films that are quite, I'll say, ludicrous with how some characters, on the verge of dying, and you might know what film I'm talking about if I describe this too well. But where the character is a God hater the whole story, and then right before they die, they get saved out of nowhere, makes no sense in real life. That's unrealistic. But I mean, could it happen? Of course it can happen, because anything's possible with God. But in context of reality, people are not going to buy that. So, but you can have, and you can still use that. You can use a character who's hated God his whole life and dies without God. You can use that to still show you how important it is to know Christ before you die, and those kind of things. But it is really sad that we tend to, that instead of being different and being real, but yet being realistic, we're trying to be so realistic that we're adopting the world's standards and the world's philosophies to try to make Christian films. It's like saying, we're going to I'm going to preach a message on the Bible, but I'm going to not use the Bible. I'm just going to take worldly philosophies and ideas and preach those instead to try to bring people to the gospel. It doesn't work.
No. It turns you into a very popular motivational speaker, but you're not seeing people having their lives and eternities changed, because the gospel works. Every revival, every awakening, every big turn happened because the gospel was used. The Holy Spirit was entrusted to add power to the gospel, not gimmicks, not sleight of hand, and not a bunch of things where it's like, we want to be the world, so we'll do a bait and switch.
Yeah.
Come to church for $100,000 and we'll give you a candy bar, that kind of
Right.
bait and switch weird stuff.
Or we'll put on a big show for you guys with all the cool lights and all of that, and that'll bring you in, and then we'll punch you in the face with the gospel, and hopefully you'll get saved, kind of a thing too.
Yeah. I think that too often we forget what Jesus showed us as how to make a difference. Just go and preach the truth. Do so without condemnation towards the sinner that's in need of healing, but also don't take any crud from the religious leaders that are pouring guilt and condemnation on the people that are hurting the most.
Yeah.
Jesus chased people out of the temple with a whip. He called the Pharisees a brood of vipers. So sometimes, if necessary, if somebody is hurting and holding down the downtrodden, sometimes calling a name to kind of try to wake them up isn't such a bad thing. I mean, I think sometimes we have those two pendulum opposites of who Jesus is. He's this peace-loving hippie that does nothing but love, 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 and love is defined by what I think it is. And then on the other side, we have Jesus, the militant, name-calling, table-flipping, whip-chasing guy. And it's like, no, he's in the middle. He's got a little of this, a little of this. He's both the lion and the lamb. And I think that and that applies to Christian productions as well. Some Christian productions go in knowing that you are preaching to the choir. You're uplifting the body of Christ. You're encouraging them. But also, if you're going to do that, don't get confused and think that you're also being an evangelist. Some productions can have an evangelical nature to them, where it may be uncomfortable for some people in the body because they're addressing some hard issues. And I think, I think I know the movie you're talking about. You did a Herculean effort to make sure not to give it away.
Yes, I appreciate that.
But I will say that a movie like Do You Believe? It stars Sean Astin and some people that you might recognize but maybe not know by name. And they did a really good job of combining, we'll talk to the Christian on one side, but also we want to talk to the other people about the truth, because you had two characters that were suicidal. You had a teen mom that was by herself going to an abortion clinic that ended up dying in childbirth, or dying while giving birth. So there again, you don't have the sunshine and rainbows happy ending, because a teenage mom died. But they do put a nice bow on the end, but still there is reality to it, to show that there's hope despite what the world experience is going to be. So I think that Christian productions can be both, but also don't fool yourself in thinking that, oh, this happy-go-lucky sunshine and rainbows production is going to preach to somebody, because if it doesn't preach in the third world, then it doesn't preach the gospel.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we're in agreement, which is why I like you.
Yeah, it's nice when you can get along with somebody that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are about out of time. We try to keep it to an hour because we want to respect your time and respect our audience's time. So we have 2 more segments to wrap up with. The first is called the interrogation. It's 7 random questions that otherwise wouldn't have fit, and they're mostly softballs, so nothing to worry about too much. So here we go. So if you could only watch one movie or TV series over and over, which one would it be?
Oh boy. Hard to say. I always go back to Little House on the Prairie, but I think I would say Highway to Heaven.
Oh, good one. Number 2, what's your we just celebrated Easter. What's your favorite Easter dish?
I would say probably mashed potatoes.
Good.
I make it myself.
Oh, nice. All right, so on the mashed potatoes, what's your secret? Do you just mash milk and butter, or is there a secret ingredient?
It's exactly that. I just mash them really, really well, and they just turn out really nice and fluffy.
Here's a tip for all those out there that maybe want to experiment. Cut down on the milk and use chicken stock.
I may try that at some point.
Yeah. All right. Question number 3. What are you reading right now? Because obviously you've got plenty of books behind you.
Yeah, well, right now I'm reading the question that you put up on the screen. So that's my answer.
All right. As far as like when camera is off and you're by yourself, is there a specific book you're reading outside?
Not currently. I've been too busy to really continue reading a lot. I've been going through the Lemony Snicket, A Series of Unfortunate Events, but I haven't had time to really get back into them. I think I'm on book 4 out of 14, so I got to get back to it. But yeah, I've just been so busy I haven't been able to sit down and just kind of take the time to read.
Gotcha. All right. Number 4, what passage or story from Scripture is speaking to you or has spoken to you recently?
Well, I think, Easter was just yesterday, and so we were talking a lot about, in the service, we were talking about the resurrection being the most provable event in antiquity. So I think I can't think of a specific one passage, but just the different accounts in Luke and John, and even Apostle Paul talking about resurrection, just all the things that had to go into place, in order to, or I shouldn't put it that way. I should say it this way: all the things that would have had to not happen for it to not be true. Just thinking about all the things that have happened with. I know it's a quick segment, so I'm trying not to tie it down here, but just all the different things with the Roman guards, and they would have been killed if the body somehow got taken away. The burial clothes were the most expensive items in the tomb. Why would those have been left behind if the body was stolen? If he really was, the body was still there, and someone took it, like the Pharisees or whatever, why didn't they show everybody and quell the whole idea that he had resurrected? Those kind of things. So that's what's really been on my mind right now, and just how provable that whole event is. Most provable event ever.
Yeah, and you also think about the very, like you were saying, the very fact that if the Pharisees or the Romans had taken the body, they would have put it up on display to say, hey, he's not walking. And also to think that a couple of fishermen, a former tax collector, and, and not to sound any kind of way, but in a group of women would be able to fool the Roman army. I think that in of itself is proof that Jesus rose. Mm-hmm. And once you accept that fact, you have to determine for yourself whether or not Jesus was who he said he was, or is he just a lunatic that somehow managed to come back to life?
Right. 2 quick things on that before we move on, because I thought that's really interesting. So you mentioned women, and women were not considered, human in a sense. They were considered more property, and their word would not have been believed. But those were the first people that the news of his resurrection was given to.
Mm-hmm.
And so why would you, if you're trying to develop this lie that he's been resurrected, why would you tell people that word would not have been used even in a court of law as evidence for anything, as testimony? And then talk about Christ appeared to 500 people after his resurrection at one time. And people suggesting hallucination. Two people don't even have the same hallucination together, exact same details. How would 500 people have a mass delusion? And there's a really great debate you can watch. William Lane Craig versus I'm forgetting his name, something Parsons, something M. Parsons, I think, debate, and they're talking about the resurrection, and he talks about, William Lane Craig, is the Christian, says, there's no way that could possibly happen, and Parsons says something to the effect of, think it's a delusion, and he said, William Lane Craig said, there's no possible way that you would believe, in something. He said, oh yeah, if I were to, be at home at night and then this the sky would open up and this figure would appear with this Michelangelic face, and all this, and say in a big booming voice, believe this, something Parsons, I do exist and I'm tired of your whatever it was he said. Then I would be in the pew in the church next to you, be in the pew next to you at church the next Sunday, and everything. And then William Lane Craig said, you don't think you would say, boy, I must have had a hallucination.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you that there's no way that 500 people saw a hallucination together. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah. And a great movie that expresses kind of the opposite side of this is called Risen, which kind of explains and dives into what the Roman perspective on the resurrection would have been. Because it's not like they put somebody to death and he disappears. They're like, oh, no big deal. They would have went searching. And the fact that the 11 apostles outside of John were all martyred because they kept telling the story, again, it just lends credence to the fact that why would you suffer and die for a lie?
Exactly.
So, good stuff. So check out Risen as well as Passion of the Christ, which I unfortunately learned is not a date movie. I learned that in college.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on who your date is, though.
Right. So, next question. What scares you?
What scares spiders. That's why. No, I would say seriously, what scares me the most is people I'm very close to that aren't Christians going to hell. That's definitely got to be it, because the older I get and I see what's going on in our world right now, you just know the end's coming very soon. And it's like, I know people that I don't know if they're saved, and it really scares me that they may not have much time left.
Yeah, I understand that. Number 6, what has been your proudest moment?
I don't know how to answer that one. I could say one of my proudest moments is passing stunt driving school, because that was incredible. That was 3 days of just craziness. One of the most difficult things I've had to do. 8 hours a day of trying to make the car do what you want it to do, and having a teacher who was so, like, ex-Marine, older guy, like in the 70s, amazing driver, and just very, like, he would get on your case if you didn't do it right, and he had a very short span for his not his temper, because he never lost his temper, but just his being frustrated. He got frustrated easily. Like, why can't you figure this out? It's easy. Well, in his mind, it's easy because he's been doing it for 50 plus years, but for us, it's brand new. And just being able to pass this test that we had to do, I think 6 maneuvers in confined spaces in under a minute, in order to pass, and he doesn't pass everybody. So to be able to pass that was a huge accomplishment. That, and probably walking 50 miles in one day for charity, or not charity, but for my parents' fine arts program to raise money, are probably two of my proudest moments, because that was really pushing myself to the limits, physically speaking and mentally.
Gotcha. Wow. 50 miles in at one time. I think I didn't walk 50 miles in 2021.
No one did it in 2020. I'll tell you that.
Those of us that decided to break mandate and actually go outside and vitamin D, we follow the science. So, final question of the interrogation is, what is your dream role and with whom would you most like to work?
Wow. Hard to say what my dream role is because I don't even know if it exists yet. I always find the term dream role difficult because that implies a character that's been played previously, or as a historical figure, or a storybook character or something like that. And it's really hard to pick one. I love characters, and I'll keep this brief. I love characters like Jean Valjean from Les Miserables, Sidney Carton from Tale of Two Cities, characters like that, characters that are going through a lot internally and having to deal with outside struggles. Basically, really well written characters. So I couldn't pick one particular dream role, but something along those lines. I think Jean Valjean is probably one of the best examples I can give of a character. And then whom would I like to work with the most? That is hard to say because there's a lot of really great, talented people out there that'd be great to work with. And I've heard a lot of different things about different actors in the secular world. It's like they sound like they'd be really fun to work with. Others like they seem cool, but they're not, or whatever. So I couldn't pick one specific person, but there's probably like a handful of people I'd be like, man, if I could work with them, that would be really cool.
All right. Very political answer. I appreciate that.
You know how it is. You know how it is. It's I can't pinpoint one person to be like, that's the person, because I may change my mind about that in a couple months.
Right, exactly. Totally understand. I'm just giving you a hard time.
You always do.
Yeah. We're like brothers. Well, we are brothers, thanks to Christ.
Yes.
So the final question is always, for anyone that wants to use their gifts for God's glory, what would your wise counsel be for them?
I would say for that, make sure your motives are correct. That's always a big thing because, especially if you're looking at the performing arts, whether it's acting or music or what have you, if it's a performing art, your ego can get in the way so fast, and you could start off with good intentions and very, very quickly change. Because once you start to get well known or whatever, then all of a sudden it goes to your head. And I think that's a problem. A lot of why some parents don't like their kids getting into this stuff, because there's a chance to all of a sudden have a huge ego. But make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And so always be examining yourself. Why am I doing this? Because if you're in it for the wrong reasons, then God's not going to bless you. And also you're not going to have the impact you may think you're having or want to have, because again, your motives are in the wrong place. So definitely before you pursue, like, say, acting, I know acting's probably the best example of an ego booster, because you get all this fame for being even happens in community theater. If you're involved with the same community theater constantly, you can start to become like the guy at this theater, and then you think, oh, I'm the most talented, most desired actor in this theater group, and everyone's coming to see me, and you just get this attitude going. And so it's very easy to happen in the acting world because people are so willing to give you accolades, unless they're a critic, then it's the exact opposite. But it's really this thing of make sure that you stay humble, and your motives are you're doing it for the right reasons. And that's the biggest thing, because even if you're doing it for the right intentions, it can very easily shift to something different. And you see that happen to a lot of people that in Hollywood or even in Christian films that started off, they seemed like really nice people. They were really humble. And as they got more successful and more famous, next thing you know, they're like not talking to people. They're belittling people that are beneath them. And next thing you know, it's like, I don't want to work with them. They're terrible. And that can happen in the Christian film industry so fast too, because we're all human. We all have those human desires to be well received, to be appraised and everything. And very easily you can become there's a big difference between becoming a role model and becoming an idol, because I think it's great if you can be a role model for people as an actor or whatever. But that can easily turn from being a role model to being an idol for somebody, and making sure you don't accept that and always try to point them to the only person they should idolize, and that's God.
Yeah. Good word. I appreciate that. And for our audience, be sure to connect with Jonathan on Facebook or Instagram at actor Jonathan Wessel. You can find the links in our show notes. So be sure to connect there and find out what projects you can find him in. He's got a lot of stuff in the works, as well as fitting in some comedy every once in a while.
Yeah.
And we're continuing our look at and our celebration of comedy for April. We're going to have Kelly Z coming up on Friday. So special extra edition this week, kind of to make up for missing last week's Easter holiday. And then next Monday night, we'll have Brooke Simpkins, the beauty of live productions. Brooke. I was adding a little bit of accent there.
I was going to say, you were trying to go for some foreign accent there, and maybe do some gibberish.
Anyway, so Brooke is coming up next Monday. Kelly this coming Friday live here on Facebook and YouTube. And again, check out Jonathan's work. See him in person next Friday on the 29th. We will be at the Roxy Theater raising money for RFK. And connect with Wellversed at Wellversed CMDY on all your favorite social platforms. So, Jonathan, thanks again for coming on. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Can't wait to work with you again really soon.
Sounds good. See everybody later. Thanks for tuning in.